Okay, hello everyone, this is Victor Momo from ExcelMoments, and it's been a while I did a video on Power Automate Desktop. So, well, today is a good day. We're going to have a video on Power Automate Desktop, and I'm going to use it for, I would say, a real life or personal use case, which is to retrieve flight information, flight details and costs, from a web page, which is more like scraping, data off a web page and bringing that into Excel. It is a very interesting use case, and you will learn quite a bit, and some of these skills can be applied, in any other, web scraping activity that you may want to undergo, which will include how to populate, text fields on a web page, how do you click a link, on a web page, how you use, variables, how you use, loops, how you extract data or scrape that data from a web page, and bring it into Excel. So it's going to be a long video, but trust me, it's going to be worth, every second of your time. So I'm just going to get into it, show you the site I want to scrape the data from, and then we'll come and build the flow, from scratch. It's really a flow, so it always flows. So let's get into this. Okay, so I'm just going to, refresh this site. This is the Arike site, and you notice that when I do that, it first of all brings up this ticket scam alert. The reason I'm pointing this out is because ideally, before you would, start populating anything here, it's more like you need to find a way to escape this. So the easiest way would be to click this close button. Okay, so when you're setting up your flow, you have to factor that in, that well, it will need to do this. Okay, so we click close, then I select from here. I'm just going to be using two destinations. I mean, like two locations, one for, departure, one for arrival. So I'm flying from Lagos, and I'm going to Abuja, and that will be, standard across everything I will do. The only thing that will really be changing is the date. I'll explain to you what I'm trying to do. And then I choose one adult, and then I do flight search. That's basically it. Okay, and then it gives me this information. So this is what I want to scrape into Excel. I want to take, the departure time, arrival time, and the cost. The cost is the most important element to me, but I know that the cost would vary also based on the time of the day, whether you're taking the first flight, the last flight, or, some flights in between. So I want to have that information so that I fully understand, the data that I have, and that would drive, the decision that I will make. So here is really where it gets interesting. Somebody's like, Victor, why would you want to create a robot to just do this? Which is something I just did in 10 seconds, right? And then pull all this information. What I'm trying to do is not just for one date. I'm trying to see how the cost also varies, based on when I book the flight relative to when I'm flying. So if I'm booking for a flight that is in 3 weeks, in 4 weeks, in 5 weeks, in 6 weeks, or, in 10 days, 11 days, 12 days, how does the cost vary, based on when I book it, so that the earlier I book it, the cheaper it probably is, except for, of course, festive periods and holidays where flights are naturally expensive. So that's kind of, what I'm trying to get at. Okay, so I hope that's fine. So let's get into, our Power Automate, and we're just going to create, this exact thing in there. So let's go here. Let's do a new flow, and I'm going to call this, get, flight details. All right, and I'm going to do create, and you're just going to follow the process the way you would do it manually. That's why I tell people that if you have to automate the process, you must understand it. You must be able to execute it manually, right? If you can't, then you can't automate it. All right, so the first thing, before you can even say, oh, I want to check this flight or that, you need to open the web page, right? So we can use the word launch, right? I'm using, Microsoft Edge, so I'm just going to pick this one and say launch new Microsoft Edge. Right, so it launches a new instance. It's going to call that instance browser. You can change this name, but that's okay for me. The initial URL is the same thing. I want it to go to, that Arike site, and I want this to be opened maximized, meaning that the window is kind of opened full screen. Okay, save that. Right, so once it does that, the next thing you remember is that it will pull up, that scam alert, which you now need to click, a button on, which is like clicking a link. Right, so you look here again in your actions, you will see click link on web page. That's what you need. Click link on web page, right? And then we need to know what element exactly, we are trying to click. So let's go back to the web page. You can see if you come here, there are many things you could possibly click on. You could possibly click here, 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 and this button. So we need to get like the unique identifier for this UI, user interface element. So let me go back here and then I say I want to pick a UI element. So once I do that, you can see that I now have my UI element picker, right? And it says, okay, what element do you want to pick? Whenever you get to it, or when you get to it, just do a control and a left click. So this is the button, so I do control left click. Okay, so it kind of pulls that up for me, so you can see it here, right? And I say select, and what I want to do is I want to do a left click. There are many things you can do. Is a double click, but this is a left click, so it's basically saying left click on that close button. So whenever my robot runs, it knows what item or element it needs to click on. Okay, so good. So once it's done that, the next thing is that we can start populating information in here. We need to populate our from, where we are flying from, where we are flying to, the number of adults, and the departure date. So let's start one after the other. So now we are not clicking, we are populating, right? Because we need to it's like typing in the text. So populate, you need to expand this here so you don't pick the wrong one. So this is populate text field in window, this populate text field in web page. So web page is the one you want. Okay, so we come here, we do add UI element. Okay, so I'm going to do a control left click in this here. So I do control left click. So that's my from. Okay, so you can see the preview, and then I'll just put the text the way it should appear. I know how it looks like. This is what it is. Okay, so that's what is there. Then next thing, I'm going to do the same thing. I then pick where I'm flying to. So I do this, and then I say add UI element. Same thing, I just pick that. I do control left click. Okay, good. So let's select this and say this way I'm flying to, right? And then that one is just Abuja, ABV. Okay, so that's just like airport codes, like LHR for London Heathrow. Okay, good. So that's that. Then we need to populate the number of adults that are flying, right? So let's go again, pick UI element. So here, and then I come to this guy and I do control left click. This value should be 1, right? Because it's just one adult. And then I say adult. That's that. Select. So that's done. Okay. Then the next thing is to populate the date, which is also the same thing. Populate text field on web page. I go again and I select UI element. This one looks like it's tricky because normally the date has like a date picker, right? But when you select a date, what you see populated in this text box here is like dd/mm/yyyy. So that's the format. So what it means is no problem, even if I see the date picker or not, it's okay. I just put the text in the format I know it needs. So I'll do a control and a left click here, right? And then that's my departure date. So I do departure date and then select, and for this one I say 29/12 2023. That's the format that I put it in when it puts the date. Okay, and I say save, right? So now let's test at this point to see that everything here works all the way to populating all that information. So we're just going to play, and it's going to run from step 1 all the way to the end. So it's going to launch a new web page. You should click that button to close. It's done that. You should put where we are flying from. Good. You should put where we are flying to. Good. You should put the number of adults, 1, and you should put a departure date, right? As you can see, the date picker, is still there, which is the reason why when I did it, I selected, the adult first before the date, because when you have the date this way, it kind of masks this adult text box that you really cannot even select anything. The robot will not see it, which is why, well, I've learned from experience. That's why I decided to do the adult first before populating the date. Okay, so good. Once you do this, the next thing is to click this button, flight search. So now let's go back to our robot. Okay, good. So now we are no more populating. This is now clicking because we are done populating. So we want to click link on a web page. Yeah, like it's a button. Well, there's a link behind. That's why it's able to head somewhere when you click it, right? So, we do add UI element, and we do the same thing. We do control left click. Right, so let's see that element here. Yeah, that's that. Okay, so, and we do a left click. So once this runs, it should open for us, the final page where we'll scrape data from. Let me just close one of this. So let's run this again. Shouldn't take any time. So let's see it do everything. And most important thing is that we get to the page where we can scrape information from. That's the important thing. Okay, so yeah, looks like magic, right? everything is just being populated and I'm just folding my hands. Wow, this is nice. Okay, good. So we are here now. So now that we are at this stage, we can now scrape, the information that we need, which is really the departure time, arrival time, and the flight costs. Okay, so let's go back to our robot. So at this point, we are not doing either of clicking a link or populating. We are kind of retrieving data from the web page, which is scraping it. But the technical term used here, for Power Automate Desktop is extract data. And of course, you get to know all of this once you do it a lot of times. Okay, so it says extract data from web page, right? So now we want to extract data from web page, right? It's going to create a variable, for the result that comes out, that data. Let me call this flight details. Okay, so that's what I want, mine to be called. So when it pulls that information, it should store it in a variable called flight details. So once you go back to the web page now, you'll see something interesting. See, automatically now you have a live web helper, which is kind of different from, the UI picker that we had before, but it still does the same thing, in the sense of it's able to extract, information from here. So now let's look at the information we want to extract. So what you do is you just go over there. In this case, to this text, you right click, and you'll see that you have, extract element value, which is what I want. I want to extract that text. I take it, you can see it here. So in my preview, I've picked it. I can pick, the arrival time. Maybe not the most important. If I know when it's leaving, that's fine, Okay, I do text, good. Then I pick, really what I'm interested in, because I'm trying to save money here. Like, okay, so I need cheap flights. So I do that. So now you see that it just populates it like, 3 unrelated values, right? But see something interesting. Once you move out of this particular, element, which is like saying, yeah, this one, this first row, if you look at them, these are like different rows, right? You can see this is another one. Once you then select like something similar to what you selected from the first, Excel now sees a pattern. Oh, I was saying Excel, the web page, right? Now sees a pattern and realizes that, oh, this looks like it's a table. He's picking, departure times, arrival times, and costs. So what you do here is you come here and then you right click, then you do extract element. Just watch your preview and you see what happens. The moment you do text here, you see what it's done. It's created a data table now. It can see that, oh, it's like, yes, this guy wants to take all this information from each of these records, and it puts it in a table for you. You can see that these two have no values there for the cost. Why? That's because, those flights are sold out. As you can see, there are no seats. That's okay. That's information I can deal with, when I get to Excel. But the most important thing is that I'm able to extract all the information. And then when I get to Excel, I can, manipulate it however I want and, get that to work. So let me just do finish at this point. I don't want to do, a lot in there, since I would want to do it with PowerQuery. So, and then I do save. So this is everything, to this point. So let's close this. We are going to run this all the way, and let's see if we get that in here. One thing to note here is that you can say store data. You either store it in a variable, you store it in an Excel sheet, right? So ultimately, when we run it, we are going to put it into Excel finally. But I just want you to see how, it kind of works here. So this will be like stage 1 of everything we are doing. Okay, so let's play, and then let's just have it, run. Once it gets to the page where it extracts, I will come back to, Power Automate Desktop. It should already have it. Okay, so it's doing all of that. So imagine having to do this for like 50 dates, and then you now scrape all the information. I think it's better to have a robot do it. Well, you may not agree with me, but that's where I stand. All right, good. So let's go back here, So now, don't forget that we created a variable called flight details, and you can see this is flight details. It has 4 rows and 3 columns, and you can see that information in here. If we had said go to Excel sheets, it would have dumped this data into Excel, and you have it, automatically. So the flow, is fine as is. At least from beginning to end, everything works well. The only thing we need to do now is to infuse it, with Excel. What I'm going to do is this. In Excel, I'm going to have a list of dates, and those are the dates that I want it to then populate. So it's going to populate 29th, 30th, 1st, and so on. And it's going to pull all the information, and we pull it all together. So this is the end, of the first phase, which is really seeing how the flow works. And trust me, this is good enough for you to even do, quite a bit, especially if your scenario does not involve looping, right? You can pull all that and, you know, scrape. Even if you had 50, you know, possible flights on that day, it will scrape it all in one table, and you have that information already in Excel. So once we're done with this bit, we can now go into the Excel, you know, side of it. A good time, you know, to pause for tea break. Okay, so welcome to the second part of this video. In the first part, we're able, you know, to launch a web page, you know, populate where we are flying from, where we are flying to, you know, the dates, how many adults, click the search, and, you know, return, you know, the data here, which is what we scraped currently into a variable, but we're going to scrape it into, you know, Excel ultimately. So I have prepared, you know, an Excel workbook for this second part of this, which is really where I want to be able to pull information for multiple dates, right? So what I have here, these are the dates. I formatted them to look like what the web page needs. So we are going to loop from row 3 all the way till the last row of data. You're not going to hard code 20. You want it to be dynamic in such a way that if somebody else, you know, adds more dates to this workbook, it still works. Okay, so it's going to loop through all these dates, and then it populates the results it finds here. Don't forget that, you know, you're going to have multiple flights per day, so it's not like a like for like. So for 29th alone, you may have data up to here, and for 30th, you know, you may have data up to here, that way. But the first thing is, let's get a list of dates that we know we are looping through, and then what we'll do in the loop is just to take that date, put it into the web with all the other information that we have, pull the result, dump it in Excel, and so on and so forth. So let's close this first, but note that we are interested in column B, starting from row 3. That's the first thing, and then the output would be in column EF, but we'll come back to this. So let's go back to you know, our Power Automate. So the first thing we need to do is to launch Excel, you know, so that we can open that workbook. So I will do launch Excel. I won't say blank document. I will say I want a specific document. If you are using a variable, use this. If you want to browse to a file, use this. Okay, so let's go to my desktop, and then I have something on airports. Yeah, so that's this. So that's the file. If you open it as read only, you can't write into it. You know that you want to copy information from the web and paste it in there, so you don't want to open as what? Read only, right? That's what you don't want to do. This variable is called Excel instance. You may want to change the name. Maybe you want to call it maybe Excel WKB, like Excel workbook. Okay, so you save that. So this is going to open you know, that file. Yeah, then once it opens that file, the first thing you now need to do is you need to read, you know, that column B. But now you need to know, what row am I going to stop? It starts on row 3. At least that's where the first date is. But you need to figure out where is the first, you know, free row, or the last, you know, occupied row. PAD already has something that can help you with that. If you type in free here, you will see get first free row on column from Excel worksheet. Okay, so that's the good thing here. We know that that's column B, right? So we are interested in column B, and it will tell us what is the first free row on column B. So let me change this name, you know, to maybe first free call B. So it will tell us that, oh yes, you have data in column B, meaning the dates run all the way from row 3 up to row, you know, 20 or 21. But don't forget, this is first free row, not last used row. They are two different things. Okay, all right, let's save that. Let me open the Excel sheet again so that I can explain these bits, right, so that you know what I'm referring to here. The first free row, when it looks at column B, is this, but that's not the last used row. The last used row is this. So if you are trying to get, you know, the actual range you are looping, you know, through, you're not looping through everything all the way to first free row. You're looping through everything to first free row minus 1, because this is first free row, but this is where you want to stop. Okay, so if you go back to PAD, we already know where the first free row is. We now want to read all those dates. So you have an action called read from Excel worksheet. You pull that in there. Now, are we reading from a single cell? No, we are reading from a range of cells. Okay, we are starting in column B. We know the first date is in you know, row 3. We already know that. First end column, yeah, we are ending is still column B, because we are not moving out of column B. And then the row we are ending on, you can pick your variable from here, and you see first free column B. But don't forget that that's not where you're going to. You're going to first free column B minus 1, and you make sure that all that expression is between the two percentages. Okay, so what this means is that it's going to launch Excel. It's going to figure out where the first free row is. It's going to read the data. The data it's going to read is going to be from row 3 to wherever you know, the data stops. Okay, so let's run that bit of it and see how that works. So let's come here, let's just put, you know, as in our debug point here. So it means it's going to run these first 3 steps. Then I will check the values of the variables in there and see what that is. Okay, so let's go. So it's going to launch Excel now. You probably see Excel open on my taskbar. Yeah, you can see that's done. Then you should figure out, yeah, every other thing, which it has done. Okay, so let's see now. So if you look at Excel data, see what it's done. It's reading the dates from, you know, 29th of December all the way, you know, to where? The last date. Okay, so 15th of January. So it's been able to do that successfully. So those dates now that you have in this variable called Excel data, that's what we are going to loop through and then use that to populate the web. Okay, so let's stop this. Right, so now we are going to loop through each of, you know, those dates inside this Excel data. So you have different ways you can loop. You can use, you know, loop, but this one looks like an easy case to use for each, meaning that for each date in there, do this. And you know what we are doing for each date? It's just to repeat the same thing we've done, but we change the date at every step. So I can pull up a for each. Okay, which is, let me put that here. Now for each, it says, what value are you iterating through? Excel data is what stores all those dates. So we are looping through Excel data. So here's Excel data. This is Excel data. So those are all our dates. Now, at every point when it loops, it wants to call the date it is on currently as current item. I may choose to call it selected date. Okay. So meaning that when it goes through the first date it sees, at that point, that date will be the selected date. It will use it. When it gets the result, it will go to the next item in the list. That will become the selected date. It will use it and go on like that. Okay, so save. So now you know that what we are doing for each of the dates is basically the same. It's the same thing. It's really what we had done in the first part of the video, which is where we launch, we paste where we are flying from, flying to, and all that. So everything inside of here, you know, can come within here. Basically is what we are saying, right? So we will launch, you know, Edge. We'll close that pop-up that comes. We'll put where we are flying from, where we are flying to, adult. This is the only thing that is going to change. You know, here, if you look at the date, where we populated the date, we had coded it and said, oh, 29th. But now we have a variable that is able to get the date from each row of that Excel, one after the other. And that variable is called selected date. So where is that? Selected date. So that's what we're going to use. Sorry, selected date. Good. Okay, so at every point in here, when it gets to you know, the web page, it will look at which date it is currently iterating through, and it's going to dump that, you know, in there. Okay, so that's the only thing that's really changing, and then it would, you know, click the flight search, so it searches for the flight. So now let's come to this part here, which is where we extract, you know, the data. You know, what we are doing before is we extract it to a variable, and I may still keep it at that, you know, and I will copy, you know, this information that it has extracted and dump it in Excel. But when we are dumping it in Excel, we need to know where we are going to dump it. I mean, in terms of the row, right? So now, you know, this is where that data is coming into. The departure time, arrival time, and all that. This is where it's coming in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at column F. I will get the first free row on column F, so that when I paste the data, you know, if I don't know the first free row, what it means is that I could be pasting my data on top of themselves instead of stacking them. That's what would happen. So I would figure out, oh, where is the last place where it pasted data? So tell me where the next free place is, and then that's where you're going to paste. So I'm going to repeat just the same logic like I used here, where I found the first free row in column B. This time I'm going to find the first free row in column F. Okay, so I'm going to do free. All right, so let's pick that, guess first free row. So I could put that here. All right, so, and then here I'm looking at column F. I'm going to give it a name, you know, and I'm going to call this, you know, first free call F. Okay, so that's what this is going to be called. So first free column F. So once it has figured that out, then I will now paste the data. So this part here, it extracts it into a variable called flight details. Then in the next step that I'm going to do now, I'm going to now paste that flight details into the Excel sheet. So what we've been doing is, you know, read from Excel. Now we are going to write to Excel, which means we are copying data into Excel. So I will say write to Excel sheet. So, okay. So now it says, yes, what value do you want to write? I just picked that variable. The variable is flight details. That's what it will pick from the web, which is this information. For anybody who's lost track, this information here is what is called flight details. Okay. So it's going to paste that in. So let's go here. Let's put flight details. Okay, and it says on a specified cell, yes, column F, and then you paste it on the row, the first free row that you find on column F. okay, so that the data can be aggregated. So select, okay, so that's good. So that's where it's going to paste it. The last thing I just want to do is, to paste the dates also, right? I can decide, but if you think about it, when we pull this information here, the date is not here from this table. It's just the times and the flight cost. But I can just on one row, a single row, just paste what the date is. It will look funny. There will be blanks in the Excel, when it's finally outputted. But you will see that we can clean that up easily with PowerQuery. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to also include, so that I know, because when this data is pasted and I see a time, I don't know which date that time is. So alongside on the first row for each of those dates, I want you to also paste, the date you are currently iterating through. So if this is 29th, paste 29th, in column E for me. So here, value to write. The selected date, it should be there somewhere. Okay, so whatever date we are on, do that, paste it in column E and on also that first free row. Okay, so it's only going to paste it on that first free row in column F. Right, so let me show you what this would look like in a sense. It means that if he comes here and he sees data all the way here, by the time he's coming in for the next flight, it will paste the data here, to say, oh yes, this is the first, free row. It will paste that data here. The other data that is coming from the web will be here. I can always do a fill down, to fill in this blank. So it's fine, for me as far as I'm concerned. You'll see what it looks like. I want to do most of my manipulations in PowerQuery. That's what I want to do, and in Excel. So let me close this. And then we can now run the entire thing and see what happens. So if it at least, starts the iteration and is able to go from, row to row. So let's go. Let's see what happens. First thing is to launch Excel, it will figure out, the first 3 rows, and now it's into the loop. So it opens the web page. It's going to click that close button, and then once it clicks that, it will start populating the information. So from to the first date it should see is 29th, so you should see 29th. Let's see if that's the date it puts. The most important thing is that when it gets to the next step, it changes that date to 30th. Yeah, but that's where the for each comes in, because the for each is saying, okay, it will take the first element. Once I'm done doing all the calculations, I will come. So let's watch out for the date it picks here, that it picks 30th. So once it picks 30th and it goes through that, I would then keep quiet, so I can either, fast forward this portion of the video or even totally delete it. Good, that's 30th, so that's fine. So it works. Okay, so it's going to do the flight search. Right, so it's going to take this data, as well, and it's going to paste it in Excel. Yeah, there's a part that I forgot to include that I should have included, because for each of this is opening all the web pages every time. At the end of each of them, I'm supposed to do like a close, but I forgot that step. But that's okay. It's just to say that when it's done for that particular date, close it, so that you don't have a situation where you now have 20 web pages open. But that's fine. You know what to do. I'll show you once we are done with this. So I would leave this at this point, so just for it to do its thing, then I'll come back when it's done. Okay, so the flow is finished. Let's see what we have in Excel. All right. Okay, so I'm just going to select, do a Control-Shift-End all the way. Let me expand this. All right, wrap text. Okay, good. Let's just put borders around all of them. Take out those views. Those were just for illustration. Okay, so now you probably see that in here you can see that there's a lot of trailing leading spaces, but that's fine. We have all the information we need, and you can see that here we just need to fill this date down here, and this, fill this down here, and so on. So I'm just going to take this into PowerQuery, and I should be able to get that bit sorted. Okay, so I do that. I can do a right click and G, yeah, and this is going to open PowerQuery. Yeah, depending on the type it uses. I really could just change the types in here, just update the M code, but I could decide to just do it manually. Right, this one here, this should be date. Okay, so this should be date. This should be what? Time. This should be time. and this one we could use this as, decimal number, right? So we need to then fill these dates down, across all these nulls. So you can just right click here and you do fill, and then you do fill down. Okay, now you remember that for the flight cost, all the ones that are showing null, it means that those flights, it could see them, but the seats were not available, meaning it was fully booked. So if that's not information I think I need, I probably can just filter out the nulls, of what use is it to know that there's a flight when I can't see the costs? Okay, so that's basically it. I can do close, and I'll do close and load to. Yeah, and let me load to a new worksheet. Okay, good. Right, of course I will change the format. I'm just too pedantic not to do that. Okay, so I'll just do this and I do okay. Good. So now you have all the information you can see for the dates, 29th, 30th, 31st, and so on, and you can see the prices. And from here, you can make an informed decision. What do you want to do? You want to pick the first on each of the days? Do you want to pick an average? Just to give you a sense of, as we go further, you can see here, you can see that the flights costs are very expensive within here, and what's really driving that? That's because that's kind of like what the festive period, that's really what's going on there, and then kind of goes all the way down. So that's the exercise I wanted to do. I could do it for much further into the future, yeah, but the point wasn't really about the specific example of saying flight or no flight. It's really understanding how the UI elements work. How do you populate text information into the web page? How do you extract information from the web page? How do you click on a link, then fusing it with Excel loops and for each and all of that, and getting that data into Excel so that you can then apply it to your particular use case. So I hope you found this very useful. The last thing I said here in the flow, let me just go back here, was that at the end of everything, when you launch it, you may want to close it, right, so that you don't just have a lot of web pages open. So you can do close web browser, and obviously it's going to pick the same one that was opened, and then I do save. Okay, and that pretty much is it. So if you like this video, please do hit the like button. You can subscribe to the channel ExcelMoments. For now, it's been a pleasure spending this long minutes with you. So thank you very much. I'm out.